Hashtag, single dad met his neighbor on the beach. She said, "Eyes are up here." He was stunned. Have you ever had a moment that completely changed the course of your life? A single interaction that seemed ordinary but somehow shifted everything? If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming content that reminds us how life can change in an instant. The waves crashed against the shore in a rhythmic melody that Jack Harrison had come to find comforting over the past 6 months. It was the only predictable thing in his life since Claire had left, taking half their possessions but leaving him with full custody of 7-year-old Emma. The beach had become their Saturday ritual, a brief escape from the empty house that still echoed with memories. "Daddy, watch me," Emma called, her small frame silhouetted against the setting sun as she constructed what she proudly called a sand palace. Jack smiled, grateful for his daughter's resilience. While his world had shattered, she somehow managed to find joy in building new things from broken pieces. Jack pulled his gaze away from Emma just long enough to notice a woman approaching along the shoreline. She wore a modest blue swimsuit under a light cover-up, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar, but he couldn't quite place her. As she drew closer, recognition dawned, the new neighbor who had moved into the beach house 3 doors down from his own. She slowed her pace, glancing toward Emma's elaborate sand creation, then to Jack. Her eyes, a striking shade of green, met his briefly before he realized his gaze had inadvertently drifted downward. "Eyes are up here," she said, not unkindly, but with a firmness that made him flush with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, I wasn't," Jack stammered, mortified at the implication. But when he looked up, he was stunned to see she wasn't offended. Instead, she was pointing to her face, specifically to a thin scar that ran from her left temple down to her cheekbone. "Most people pretend not to notice it, then stare when they think I'm not looking," she said softly. "I'd rather just get it out of the way." Jack felt the ground beneath him shift, not literally, but in that way life sometimes tilts on its axis when you least expect it. He hadn't even noticed the scar, and her directness caught him completely off guard. "I'm Jack," he managed, extending his hand. "And that sand architect over there is my daughter, Emma." "Olivia," she replied, her handshake firm. "I think we're neighbors." "The blue house on Shoreline Drive?" "The very same. We're 3 doors down in the faded gray one that desperately needs a new coat of paint." Emma, suddenly aware of the new presence, abandoned her sand palace and bounded over. "Did you see my castle? It has a moat and everything." Olivia knelt to Emma's level, her eyes lighting up. "It's magnificent. I'm a bit of an architecture enthusiast myself. Mind if I take a closer look?" As Emma eagerly led Olivia to her creation, Jack felt something stir within him, something he'd thought had died along with his marriage. Interest. Curiosity. The faintest flicker of possibility. That evening marked the beginning of what would become a complex, beautiful journey for Jack, Emma, and their enigmatic neighbor with the green eyes and straightforward manner. Olivia Reynolds hadn't planned on making friends in Silver Bay. After 15 years as a war correspondent, she'd bought the beach house as a retreat, a place to finish writing her memoir and heal from both visible and invisible scars. The last thing she expected was to find herself drawn to the quiet single father and his precocious daughter. As summer progressed, their lives began to intertwine in unexpected ways. Emma developed an almost immediate attachment to Olivia, fascinated by her stories of distant countries and different cultures. Jack found himself inventing reasons to run into his neighbor, borrowing sugar he didn't need, asking for advice about local schools, or, coincidentally, taking evening walks when Olivia usually did. "You're not very subtle," Olivia told him one evening as they sat on his porch swing, watching Emma chase fireflies in the front yard. "But I find it oddly charming." Jack laughed, a sound that had become more frequent in recent weeks. "Subtlety wasn't high on my priority list when I was married. Now, as a single dad trying to figure out how to talk to a woman I find interesting, it seems I haven't developed the skill." Olivia's smile faded slightly. I should probably warn you, I'm not staying forever. This place, it's temporary. Just somewhere to finish my book and figure out what's next. The words landed like stones in Jack's stomach, but he nodded. I appreciate your honesty. That's something I've come to value above most things. His mind flashed back to the day Claire had left, how she'd packed her bags while he was at work, leaving only a note explaining that parenthood and small-town life weren't what she'd signed up for. The memory still stung, but lately, it had begun to lose its sharp edge. Emma really likes you, Jack said quietly. She hasn't connected with anyone like this since her mother left. Olivia watched the little girl who was now carefully placing captured fireflies in a jar with air holes. She's special. You've done an amazing job with her. Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. That's parenting, from what I understand. And life, really. Their conversations often took this turn, philosophical, honest, touching on wounds that were still healing. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition of shared pain despite their different circumstances. As summer faded into fall, their connection deepened. Olivia began joining them for dinner several nights a week. She helped Emma with her science homework and taught her to make origami cranes. Jack found himself opening up about his failed marriage, about the struggles of suddenly becoming a single parent, about his fears that he wasn't enough for Emma. Olivia listened without judgment, occasionally sharing pieces of her own story, the car bombing in Damascus that had left her with the scar and a collection of shrapnel in her left leg, the colleagues she'd lost, the nightmares that still woke her screaming. One rainy October evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Olivia showed Jack the manuscript she'd been working on. You'd be the first person to read any of it, she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I trust your perspective. Jack was touched by the gesture, understanding the vulnerability it represented. I'm honored, he said simply, taking the pages from her hand. That night, after Olivia had gone home, he sat up reading until dawn. Her words painted vivid pictures of war zones and refugee camps, of extraordinary human resilience and devastating loss. But more than the events themselves, it was Olivia's voice that captivated him, her compassion, her unflinching honesty, her ability to find beauty in the most unlikely places. When he finished reading, Jack knew with absolute certainty that he was falling in love with her. The realization terrified him. Not only because of his past failure, but because of Olivia's repeated reminders that her stay in Silver Bay was temporary. She spoke often of publishers in New York, of possible assignments in Eastern Europe once her book was complete. Her life existed in a world far removed from his small coastal town and the hardware store he'd inherited from his father. Meanwhile, Emma had begun asking when Olivia would be moving in with them. She belongs with us, Daddy, she insisted one night as he tucked her into bed. She makes you smile the big smile, not the pretend one. Out of the mouths of babes, Jack thought, smoothing his daughter's hair. It's complicated, sweetheart. Grown-up relationships usually are. That's silly, Emma declared with the certainty only a 7-year-old could muster. If you love someone and they make you happy, you should be together. That's what my teacher says. Jack wondered what exactly they were teaching in second grade these days, but he couldn't argue with the simplistic wisdom. If only adult relationships were that straightforward. As Thanksgiving approached, Olivia's book neared completion. She began receiving calls from her publisher, discussing book tours and promotion schedules. Jack watched her growing excitement with mixed emotions, pride in her accomplishment, but dread at what it meant for their future. I've been offered a teaching position, Olivia told him one evening as they walked along their beach. It had become colder, requiring jackets and scarves, but they still made time for these walks. At Columbia. A 1-year appointment in the journalism school. Jack's heart sank further. New York. Even farther from the life he'd built here. That's incredible, he said, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. You'd be an amazing professor. I haven't accepted yet, she said, stopping to face him. The wind whipped her hair around her face, partially obscuring the scar that he now barely noticed. I wanted to talk to you first. Me? Olivia, this is your career, your life. You should do what makes you happy. That's just it, she said quietly. I'm not sure what that is anymore. For 15 years, I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. Now. She gestured vaguely toward the horizon. Now I find myself wondering if there might be different kinds of adventures worth having. Hope flickered in Jack's chest, but he tamped it down. What are you saying? I'm saying that I've spent my entire adult life running toward danger, documenting the worst of humanity. Maybe it's time to explore the best of it instead. Her eyes met his, vulnerable yet determined. I'm saying that I care about you and Emma. More than I expected to. More than I thought possible after everything I've seen. Jack wanted to pull her into his arms then, to tell her that he loved her, that Emma loved her, that they could build something beautiful together. But the memory of Claire's departure held him back, the memory of promises made and broken, of a family shattered. What if you change your mind? He asked, voicing his deepest fear. What if small-town life becomes too confining? What if you miss the adrenaline, the importance of what you were doing before? Olivia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for his hand, interlacing their fingers as they continued walking. I can't promise I won't miss certain aspects of my old life, she finally said. Just like you can't promise you'll never think about what might have been with Claire. We both have pasts, Jack. The question is whether we're willing to risk building a future together despite them. The wisdom in her words struck him deeply. She wasn't offering blind assurances or fairy tale endings. She was offering reality, messy, uncertain, but potentially beautiful. I'm scared, he admitted, the words nearly carried away by the wind. So am I, she replied. I've faced gunfire and bomb threats with less trepidation than I feel right now. But maybe that's how you know it matters. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. His mind raced with possibilities and fears, with dreams and doubts. Around 3 in the morning, he got up and went to his home office, pulling open the bottom drawer of his desk where he'd stashed the family photo albums after Claire left. He hadn't looked at them in months, finding the images too painful. Now, he flipped through them slowly, studying the woman who had been his wife. In photo after photo, he could see what he'd missed at the time, the restlessness in her eyes, the slight tension in her smile. Claire had never wanted the life they'd built, she'd just been better at pretending than he was at observing. But when he looked at photos of Olivia, candid shots he'd taken during beach outings or family dinners, he saw something entirely different. There was a presence to her, an engagement with the moment that Claire had always lacked. Olivia wasn't pretending to be content with their simple life, she was genuinely finding joy in it. As dawn broke over the ocean, Jack made his decision. He would take the risk. Not blindly, not without acknowledging the challenges they might face, but with hope that what they were building was strong enough to withstand them. He waited until a reasonable hour before texting Olivia, "Coffee on the beach? I have something I want to talk about." An hour later, they sat on a blanket spread over the cool sand, steaming mugs warming their hands against the November chill. Emma was at a friend's house for a Saturday playdate, giving them rare privacy. "I've been thinking about what you said," Jack began. "About different kinds of adventures." Olivia nodded, her expression cautious but open. "I want you to know that I understand this would be a major change for you. That there might be days when you miss your old life, when this one feels too small." He took a deep breath. "But I also want you to know that I love you. Not despite your past or because of it, but alongside it. I love who you are now, and I'm willing to grow with whoever you become next." Tears filled Olivia's eyes, catching the morning sunlight. "That might be the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me." "There's more," Jack continued, his heart pounding. "I'm not asking you to give up your career or your dreams. The teaching position in New York, if that's what you want, we can make it work. Emma and I could visit on weekends and holidays. Or. He hesitated, then plunged ahead. Or maybe there's a compromise. Maybe you could teach remotely part-time, or we could split our time between here and there. Olivia set her coffee aside and moved closer to him on the blanket. Jack Harrison, are you suggesting a long-distance relationship? He smiled ruefully. I'm suggesting that I don't want distance of any kind between us, but I'm willing to navigate it if that's what it takes. What I'm not willing to do is let fear keep us apart. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing his jawline. What if I told you I've already declined the Columbia position? Jack blinked in surprise. You have? I have. I've accepted a different offer, from the community college here in Silver Bay. They're starting a journalism program, and they want me to help develop it. It's part-time, which would allow me to continue writing and maybe do some guest lectures elsewhere occasionally. Olivia, but are you sure? Is that enough for you? Her smile was radiant. Do you know what I realized while writing my book? That all those years documenting war and suffering, what moved me most were the small moments of human connection that persisted despite everything. A mother singing to her child in a refugee camp. Two old friends reuniting across battle lines. Those were the stories that gave me hope. She gestured toward the ocean, the beach, the town behind them. And here I've found those connections everywhere. With you, with Emma, even with Mrs. Donovan at the bakery who saves those cinnamon rolls I like. This place has given me something I never had on the front lines, a sense of belonging. Jack felt something tight in his chest begin to unravel, a knot of tension he'd been carrying for so long he'd forgotten it was there. I love you, he said again, because it was the truest thing he knew. I love you too, she replied. And I want to build a life here, with you and Emma. Not because I'm settling or giving up my dreams, but because my dreams have changed. They've expanded to include you both. Later that day, when they picked up Emma and told her that Olivia would be staying in Silver Bay, and spending a lot more time at their house, the little girl's reaction was pure joy. I knew it, she exclaimed, dancing around the living room. I told you she belongs with us, Daddy. Olivia laughed, catching Emma mid-twirl and hugging her close. You're a very wise young lady, she said, meeting Jack's eyes over the child's head. The months that followed weren't without challenges. Olivia's book was published to critical acclaim, necessitating a brief book tour that tested their newly formed family unit. Jack struggled occasionally with insecurity, with the fear that Olivia would eventually find their life too constraining. Emma had moments of confusion about Olivia's role, sometimes testing boundaries or withdrawing when memories of her mother surfaced. But through it all, they communicated honestly, faced problems together, and built traditions that strengthened their bonds. Sunday brunches at the local diner. Wednesday night board games. Summer evenings on the beach, building increasingly elaborate sand structures that Emma now called our family castles.